Russia and Iran reiterate commitment to the need to solve the crisis in Syria peacefully. Al-Qaeda terrorists target the Palestinian camps to get them involved in the Syrian crisis. A new opposition demonstration is staged in Egypt against the faked referendum. Good afternoon and welcome to our news for today. Iran has reiterated its call for a peaceful solution to the crisis in Syria through dialogue among the Syrians themselves. Iran's stand was voiced by Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesman Ramin Mehmanparast in a press conference in which he urged Western states which alleged democracy and the protection of human rights to leave the Syrian people decide their own future away from any interventions. Mehmanparast warned against the support rendered by the West and some regional and Arab countries for the terrorists in Syria through providing them with weapons and funds, affirming that this would expand the area of the crisis in the region. The Iranian spokesman called on all parties which influence the armed groups to exercise pressure on them in order to establish peace and security in Syria and provide the appropriate ground for an earnest national dialogue to end the crisis. On Iran's stand regarding the deployment of Patriot missiles on the Turkish-Syrian borders, Mehmanparast said all countries should work for establishing security and peace in the region. Within the same context, the Deputy Speaker of the Russian Federation's Council, Mr. Ilyas Omakhanov, has said his country is committed to its stand towards the crisis in Syria. During his meeting with the Iranian Deputy Prime Minister for Arab Affairs in Moscow, Mr. Amir Abdullahian, Omakhanov said the Syrian future should be decided by the Syrian people only, and any attempt from abroad to impose a certain pattern would lead to further escalation of the situation in Syria. On his part, Abdullahian said, Iran considers Russia as a strategic partner, supports the solid cooperation between the two countries, and seeks to develop it in all fields. The Russian Defense Ministry has declared that a group of 5 war vessels belonging to the Russian Baltic Fleet headed to the Mediterranean to replace a number of vessels from the Black Sea Fleet that had been assigned there. In a statement, the ministry said, the military rehabilitation plan covers training the Navy personnel and the air defense, anti-war vessels and anti-submarines defense system, and facilitating communication and movement within the group. On the other hand, a source at the Baltic Sea Fleet staff said that vessel Kaliningrad, belonging to the Russian Baltic Sea Fleet, has sailed on a long journey towards the eastern part of the Mediterranean within a Russian Navy infantry unit on board. The source pointed out the vessel will land off Syrian shores, adding that the trip to the eastern Mediterranean had been planned in advance, as vessel Kaliningrad was supposed to sail towards the Syrian coast after taking part in the 2012 TOPS international trainings. The Chinese Foreign Ministry has asserted that there is only one way out of the Syrian crisis, namely through political dialogue. It called on all concerned parties in Syria to work on the basis of the Geneva Statement. The Chinese Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Hua Chunying was quoted as saying in a press conference that China is open up to any plan for a political settlement that can be acceptable by a large bracket of the Syrian people and respects the Syrian people's option. Hua called on all parties to halt the violence, work together on the basis of the Geneva Statement, and start talks as soon as possible in order to negotiate a roadmap for the transfer of power in Syria. An army unit has eliminated a number of terrorists and destroyed their weapons and ammunition In Al-Husayniya in Damascus suburbs, another army unit destroyed a mortar gun in Al-Bhaydaliyya, killing 3 terrorists. Several terrorists have been killed by our army units in Al-Mra'iyya, Al-Rushdiyya and Al-Jbayleh in Deir Ezzor. Not even the Yarmouk camp has been spared by the armed terrorist groups, particularly the Terrorism of Al-Qaeda-linked Jabhat al-Nusra, whose members have been persistent in spreading panic wherever they go. Syrian and Palestinian women, children and the elderly have found themselves driven out of their homes because of the crimes of the armed terrorist groups. The displaced citizens of the camp carried with them nothing but their basic needs. However, they remain determined to convey to the world the reality of what has happened in their camp that was once a place of security and peace for many long years. Minister of Health, Dr. Saeed al-Naif, said that an urgent shipment of medicine arrived from the Ministry of Health into Aleppo International Airport today. The shipment included medicines for chronic diseases and various medical supplies worth more than 90 million Syrian pounds. Minister al-Naif pointed out that the shipment is part of the efforts exerted to meet the health needs of various groups of patients in Aleppo. The minister added that more shipments are planned to be sent to Aleppo next week, including special surgical supplies and emergency equipment. Other medical shipments are prepared to be sent to a number of governorates, especially Al-Hasaka, Hama, Idlib, Al-Suwaida, Al-Qunaitira and Al-Raqqa. Yesterday, during his visit to Aleppo at the head of a large ministerial delegation, Prime Minister Dr. Wael al-Halaqi asserted that the government was closely following up events in Aleppo. During his meeting with a number of economic activities, he pointed out that the terrorists targeted all the economic bodies and living conditions of citizens and all the installations and institutions, including facilities and services, communications and energy. He explained that terrorist attacks on the highways leading to Aleppo prevented the arrival of quantities of fuel oil needed in the governorate. He said such basic requirements would soon become available. He clarified that large caravans carrying these materials are now ready to move to Aleppo. He said that the government spent 200 million Syrian pounds on relief materials, 100 million Syrian pounds for basic needs and services, and 140 million Syrian pounds as a contribution to the separate budget of the governorate. The government had also allocated 400 million Syrian pounds for these basic needs in the first half of next year, in addition to supplies in its warehouses worth 6 billion Syrian pounds. On the other hand, electricity was restored to several neighborhoods in Aleppo yesterday as maintenance workshops exerted unremitting efforts to repair the damage caused by the armed terrorist groups in the alternative electric lines which provide the city with electricity. Earlier this month, armed terrorist groups had attacked the gas station of Aleppo, which feed the turbines of generating electricity, leading to deviate 1,050 megawatts of electricity, which was used in providing Aleppo city with electric power. Finally, Egyptian opposition parties organized new demonstrations in Cairo and several cities today in protest against a referendum on the new constitution, as the first round of the referendum vote last Saturday witnessed many violations and fraud. The parties which called for the protest said that the march will start from Rabi' al-Adawiyya Square and in front of An-Nur Mosque into the presidential palace. Two other marches are planned to start simultaneously from Mustafa Mahmoud Square and from Shubra crossing into At-Tahrir Square. Also, a massive march will start today evening in front of the presidential palace into the headquarters of the Supreme Committee for Elections. Yesterday, Egyptian opposition Wafd Party and members of the Syndicate of Journalists protested an attack carried out by the Muslim Brotherhood on Al-Wafd Party's headquarters in central Cairo. With this, we conclude our news bulletin for today. Thank you for watching. For more information about Syria and the region, and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. And now over to latest business and market news with Nariman Qassam after a short break.